David Letterman's coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the studio floor. Paul Schaefer's fingers froze on the piano key. The band stopped mid-note. 200 people in Studio 6A stopped breathing. Sitting across from Dave was Bette Davis, the most powerful woman in Hollywood history. The actress who terrified studio heads and made grown men cry with a single look. And right now, on this October night in 1983, at 75 years old, Bette Davis was doing something she'd never done in 50 years of interviews. She was telling the truth about what Hollywood did to women who refused to be beautiful, and what she revealed would expose the cruelest secret of the golden age, that power came at a price no woman should have to pay. October 27, 1983. Studio 6A at Rockefeller Center, New York City. Late Night with David Letterman was still finding its voice in its second season. The wood-paneled studio glowed under warm tungsten light. The retro desk sat center stage. Paul Schaefer's keyboard gleamed. The Manhattan skyline sparkled through tall windows. David Letterman, 36 years old, sat behind his desk shuffling blue index cards with trembling hands. His curly brown hair was perfectly imperfect. His tie hung loose. Tonight he was genuinely nervous. Terrified, actually. Tonight's guest was legendary for destroying interviewers who bored her or asked stupid questions. Bette Davis. The booking had been a miracle. Davis didn't do talk shows anymore. At 75, she'd survived stroke, breast cancer, and a broken back. She'd made over 100 films, won 2 Oscars, been nominated for 10. She'd fought Jack Warner, stood up to Louis B. Mayer, and redefined what a leading lady could be. She didn't play victims or love interests. She played complicated, difficult, powerful women, and she terrified everyone. Davis's people had made it clear she'd do 20 minutes. No questions about her health. No questions about her feuds with Joan Crawford. Keep it professional, or she'd walk off. Bette Davis suffered fools for exactly 0 seconds. The monologue went well. Dave was sharp. The audience responded. Paul's band was tight. Everything was clicked. Then came the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave said, genuine reverence mixing with terror in his voice. My next guest is one of the greatest actresses in the history of cinema. She's won 2 Academy Awards, been nominated for 8 more, and scared the hell out of every studio executive in Hollywood for 5 decades. Please welcome Miss Bette Davis. The audience erupted, not screaming adulation, respectful, almost fearful applause, like greeting royalty who might execute. Paul's band played a dramatic orchestral piece. The curtain pulled back, and Bette Davis walked out. She moved slowly, deliberately, with a cane. Her body had betrayed her, but her presence hadn't. She wore a powder blue suit, perfectly tailored. Her hair was silver white, styled immaculate. Her face, that incredible face that had launched 1,000 close-ups, was deeply lined now, weathered by age and illness. But those eyes, those enormous, expressive eyes that had terrified and seduced audiences for 50 years, they were still sharp, still seeing everything. Dave stood, approached carefully, offered his hand. Davis took it firmly, her grip surprisingly strong. She sat in the guest chair with perfect posture despite the cane, crossed her leg, folded her hand, a queen granting an audience. Miss Davis, thank you so much for being here, Dave said, his usual confidence slightly shaken. Call me Bet, and don't thank me yet. You might regret inviting. That voice, clipped, precise, the Boston accent softened but still there. The audience laughed nervously. They talked about her early career, about working with William Wyler, all about and whatever happened to Baby Jane. Davis answered in sharp, intelligent sense. No ramp, no sense, just facts and opinions delivered with surgical precision. Then Dave asked about her reputation for being difficult. Bet you've been called difficult, demanding, temperamental. How do you respond to that? Something flickered in those famous eyes. Not anger, something deeper. Difficult? Davis said slowly. Yes, I was difficult. And you know why? Dave shook his head. Because I refused to be decorative, and Hollywood punishes women who refuse to be decorative. The studio went quiet. This wasn't the fun celebrity anecdote anyone expected. What Bette Davis said next would expose Hollywood's cruelest secret about aging actors. Can I tell you something I've never said publicly? Davis asked, not really asking permission. Please, Dave said. Davis reached into her purse and pulled out a photograph. She held it up for the camera. This is me in 1935. I was 27 years old. Warner Brothers publicity shot. The photo showed a stunningly beautiful young woman. Luminous. Perfect. They told me I'd be a star forever if I stayed beautiful, if I kept my figure, if I aged gracefully, which meant not aging at all. She put the photo down and looked directly at the camera. I'm 75 years old now. I've had a stroke. I've had cancer. I've survived things that should have killed me, and Hollywood considers me a cautionary tale. Her voice was steady, but something underneath trembled. You want to know what difficult means for a woman in Hollywood? It means you refuse to disappear when you're no longer fuckable. The audience gasped. Bette Davis had just said fuckable on national television. Dave's eyes went wide. The censors in the booth were panicked, but Davis didn't care. I played complicated women, ugly women, mean women, women who didn't didn't smile unless they had a reason, and the studio heads hated. They wanted me to be pretty and pleasant and grateful. She leaned forward. When I was 40, they stopped offering me leading roles. When I was 50, they stopped calling it all. Not because I couldn't act, because I'd stopped being decorative, because I'd gotten old, and old women are invisible in Hollywood. A woman in the front row started crying. Do you know what they said when I had my stroke 3 years ago? The industry gossip? They said, well, at least now she has an excuse to retire. As if my existence was a burden everyone was waiting to be relieved of. Her hand, resting on her cane, began to tremble. I gave Hollywood 50 years. 50 years of my talent, my body, my youth. I made studios millions of dollars. I won Oscars. I created roles that changed what women could be on screen. And my reward? Being told I'm difficult. Being told I should disappear gracefully. Being told my time is up. Dave was frozen. This was beyond anything he prepared. Bette, he said carefully, you're one of the most celebrated actors. Celebrated? Davis interrupted sharp. Celebrated means they give you awards and then forget you exist. Celebrated means they put you on pedestal so high you can't work anymore. She paused, her jaw tightened. I haven't worked in 2 years. Not one off, not one callback. Because I'm old and I've had health problems and I'm not profitable anymore. And nobody in this industry has the courage to say that out loud. The studio was dead silent except for the sound of people crying. Can I show you something else? Davis asked, reaching into her purse again. She pulled out a stack of paper letters. These are rejection letters from the last 20 scripts I was sent. Want to know what they say? She selected one at random and read aloud. Thank you for your interest, but we feel the role requires someone young. I was being considered for a grandmother role. I was 73 years old. How much younger does a grandmother need to be? She picked another. We've decided to go in a different direction. Translation. You're old and we don't want another. We don't feel you're right for the part. I created parts like this. I invented difficult women on screen, but now I'm not right for them because I'm actually old instead of pretending to be old. And then Bette Davis did something that would haunt everyone watching. Davis stood up slowly, using her cane for support. Dave started to help, but she waved him off. Stay there, she said firmly. She walked to the center of the stage, moving carefully, each step deliberate. Can I do something? Right now? On your show? Dave nodded, not sure what was happening. Davis looked directly at the camera, at America Watch, at Hollywood Watching. I want to audition live for anyone watch, for any director, any producer, anyone who still thinks I can work. The audience was stunned. Bette Davis was auditioning on a talk show. I'm going to perform a monologue from All About Eve, Margot Channing's famous speech, and I want you all to watch and ask yourself, is this woman too old to work? Is this talent too diminished? Or is Hollywood too small, too cruel, too cowardly to use what's right in front of them? Paul began to play soft, creating atmosphere, creating space, and Bette Davis performed. Funny business, a woman's career, the things you drop on your way up the ladder so you can move faster. You forget you'll need them again when you get back to being a woman. That's one career all females have in common, whether we like it or not. Being a woman. Sooner or later, we've got to work at it, no matter how many other careers we've had or won. And in the last analysis, nothing's any good unless you can look up just before dinner or turn around in bed, and there he is. Without that, you're not a woman. You're something with a French provincial office or a book full of clipping, but you're not a woman. She delivered it with everything she had. 50 years of craft, decades of pain and power and defiance. Her voice cracked in place, her body shook, but the performance was devastating. When she finished, the studio was silent for 5 full seconds. Then the audience exploded. Not polite applause, screaming, standing ovation. People were weeping openly. Davis stood there, leaning on her cane, tears streaming down her face. That's what you're wasting, she said into the microphone. That's what Hollywood is throwing away. Not just me. Every actress over 40. Every woman who's aged out of being decorative. Every talent too expensive, too difficult, too real for your comfortable little fan. She walked back to the guest chair and sat heavily. Dave was crying. He didn't even try to hide it. Bette, he said, his voice breaking. That was extraordinary. That was my last audition. Davis interrupted. Because after tonight, I'm done begging. I'm done proving I can still do this. If Hollywood doesn't want me, fine, but I won't go quiet. I won't disappear gracefully. I'll be difficult until the very end. Paul was crying at his keyboard. The audience was devastated. This wasn't entertainment. This was a funeral for dreams. But then something happened that nobody expected. From the back of the studio, a man stood up. He was maybe 40 years old, wearing a suit. He started walking down the aisle. Security moved to intercept, but Dave waved them off. The man walked straight to Bette Davis. He knelt down in front of her chair. Miss Davis, my name is James Goldstein. I'm a producer. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. I got the tickets from a friend at the last minute. Davis looked at him with those sharp eyes. Evaluate. I've been developing a script for 2 years, Goldstein continued. It's about an aging actress fighting to stay relevant, fighting the industry that built her up and threw her away, fighting to prove she still matters. His voice shook. shook. I've sent it to every actress over 60 in Hollywood. Every single one turned it down. They said it was too bitter, too angry, too real, that audiences wouldn't want to see an old woman being different. Davis's face was unreadable. But watching you just now, I realized something. They were wrong. We need this story. We need your anger. We need your truth. He pulled a script from inside his jacket. This is The Last Star, and I want you to play Margaret Wynne, the role I wrote specifically hoping someone like you would have the courage to do it. He held out the script with trembling hands. Davis stared at it, then at him, then at Dave, then at the audience. Is this real? She asked quietly. Or are you some lunatic who'll disappear tomorrow? I have finance, Goldstein said. I have a direct. I have everything except the one actress brave enough to play this role. Please, Miss Davis, read it. And if you don't want to do it, I'll understand. But please read it. Davis took the script slow, looked at the cover. The Last Star by James Goldstein. She opened to a random page and read silently for a moment. Her face changed, softened. Something like hope appeared in those tired eyes. This is good, she said simply. This is actually good. It's yours if you want it, Goldstein said. Davis looked at Dave. Did you plan this? I swear I did, Dave said. I'm as shocked as you are. Davis looked back at Goldstein. Why were you here tonight? Because my mother made me come. She's in the audience. He gestured to a woman in the third row. She's 68. She's been a fan of yours her entire life, and she wanted to see you in person before. He stopped himself. Before what? Davis asked sharp. Before I die? Say it. Everyone's thinking. Before you stopped believing anyone cared. Goldstein's mother called out from her. Before you gave up. Davis turned to look at this woman. This strange, this fan. I'm not giving up, Davis said. I'm just tired. Then rest. The woman said, but don't quit. We still need. Davis was crying now. Really crying. 50 years of armor finally cracked. I don't know if I can still do this, she whispered. I'm old. I'm sick. You're Bette Davis, Dave said firmly. And that monologue you just did was better than anything I've seen in a theater in 5 years. You can still do this. Davis looked around at Dave, at Goldstein, at his mother, at the audience, at the camera. Fine, she said, that famous defiance returning. Fine, I'll read the script. And if it's as good as these pages suggest, I'll do it. But on one condition. Anything, Goldstein said. You hire actresses over 40 for every female role. Every single. No young starlets playing older women. Real women who've lived these lives. Can you do that? Goldstein didn't hesitate. Yes. Davis nodded. Then we have a deal. And what happened next would change Hollywood forever. The Last Star was filmed in 1980. Bette Davis played Margaret Wynne, an aging Broadway actress fighting to mount one final production. The supporting cast was entirely women, over 40 actresses who'd been forgotten, discarded, told they were too old. The film premiered at Cannes in 1985. It received a 15-minute standing ovation. Critics called it devastating, necessary, Bette Davis's finest work. Davis was nominated for her 11th Academy Award at age 77. She didn't win. The Academy still wasn't ready to celebrate difficult old women, but she didn't care. I proved I could still work, she said in an interview. That's better than any Oscar. The film sparked a conversation about ageism in Hollywood that continues today. Studios started slowly, reluctantly creating roles for older actors. Not enough. Not nearly enough. But more than before. James Goldstein became known for casting older actors, for telling stories about women society had decided were finished. And his mother, Mrs. Eleanor Goldstein, became friends with Bette Davis. They had lunch every month until Davis died in 1989. At Davis's funeral, Eleanor Goldstein spoke. Bette Davis was dipped, she said. Thank God she was dipped, because easy women get forgotten. Comfortable women get erased. Bette refused to be comfortable. She refused to disappear. And she taught a generation of women that aging doesn't mean vanish. Dave Letterman attended the funeral. Afterward, a reporter asked what he remembered most about that night in 1983. I remember thinking I was just doing a talk show, Dave said, and instead, I witnessed a revolution. Bette Davis stopped being polite, stopped protecting Hollywood's feelings, and told the truth about what they do to women who age. He paused. That night changed how I approached interviews. I realized the most important thing I could do was create space for truth, even uncomfortable truth, especially uncomfortable truth. But here's what almost nobody knows. Here's the rest of the story. After that episode aired, NBC received over 20,000 letters, most from women over 40. Women who'd been told they were invisible. Women who saw themselves in Bette Davis's anger and pain and defiance. NBC executives wanted to bury the episode. Too controversial, they said. Too angry. But Dave refused. He demanded they air it again. Threatened to quit if they didn't. They compromised. They aired it once more, late night, with a disclaimer about language. That second airing was watched by Steven Spielberg, who cast an older actress in his next film, by Martin Scorsese, who started writing roles for women over 50. By a generation of younger directors who realized they'd been complicit in erasing half the population. The revolution was slow, is still unfinished, but it started that night in Studio 6A, when Bette Davis stopped being graceful and started being honest, when she said, fuckable, on television, and refused to apologize. When she auditioned at 75 years old because she refused to disappear. When she proved that difficult women are the only ones who change anything. In Bette Davis's final interview 3 months before she died, she was asked about her legacy. "I hope I'm remembered as difficult," she said. "I hope young actresses learn from me that being liked is vastly overrated. Be talented, be honest, be difficult, and never, ever let anyone convince you that your value expires at 40. The interviewer asked, "Any regret?" "Only one," Davis said. "I wish I'd been more difficult. I wish I'd fought harder. I wish I'd burned down the whole damn system instead of just denting." She smiled that famous Bette Davis smile. "But I dented it pretty good." That's the legacy, not the Oscar, not the film. The refusal to disappear, the insistence on being seen, the absolute rejection of the idea that women have expiration dates. Bette Davis was difficult for 75 years, and Hollywood is better. And somewhere in film schools across America, young actresses watch that Letterman episode. They watch Bette Davis audition at 75. They watch her refuse to be graceful. They watch her choose honesty over likability. And they learn the most important lesson Hollywood never wanted to teach them. Difficult women change the world. Easy women get forgotten. Be difficult.